Okay, good. Holistic development can only be attained through experiential learning that gives students the opportunity to observe and interact freely with the environment and thus be able to conceptualize and reflect. Job shadowing is one such method of experiential learning which our school has been organizing for the last 4 years. This year, we have invited professionals and executives from different organizations, universities, corporate offices, hospitals to share their experiences with our students in the virtual platform. Today, we are proud to have amongst us our past pupil, Drishti Jalan, who is a student at the University of Toronto as a political science specialist, book history and media studies major, and women and gender studies minor, pursuing a certificate in international affairs. She was a part of MBWA's 2017-2018 batch, an active and committed participant in model UN conferences, debates, writing, and student publishing in high school and university. Rishti is a role model for many. She is currently involved as an editor for several publications at University of Toronto and continues to attend Model UN conferences. Planning on pursuing law school in the future, she has a keen interest in global politics, the media, and social advocacy. Today, she'll guide us from her experience in studying abroad, which will be truly helpful for our students who are eager to pursue their future studies in foreign universities. And I must say, I feel very proud to introduce Drishti, being her class teacher in class 11 and 12. Now, over to you, Drishti.
Thank you, ma'am. I hope everyone is doing okay. Thank you for allowing me to speak today, and it's really heartwarming to see all of you. I know a lot of you because you were all my juniors in school, and my teachers have always been my biggest supporters. They were in school. They are the reason why I am where I am right now, which isn't a lot, but it's really nice that I can do something for my school after I've graduated. So to begin, the reason why I chose to go abroad in the first place was something that really happened when I was very young. I had wanted to go abroad since I was maybe in middle school. And when the opportunity came, when I sat down with my family to discuss my plans for the future, going abroad was a topic that I always pushed. But it wasn't very easy just because I am a girl, and informally speaking, most of you know that there is this notion attached that you have to take care of your safety. Is it going to be safe when you live alone if you go abroad? Because I didn't particularly have family in the city I am in. I'm in Toronto right now. So that was a big point of discussion. Um, it took me about a year to just convince my family that I wanted to go abroad. Like the process started in grade 11 because I knew that is something that they didn't even take me seriously when I first started approaching the topic. So I just started the process in grade 11. So maybe I'll go back a little bit and tell you why I wanted to go abroad and how I went about the process. Um, I started going to model UNs and debates when I was in high school, which was like the highlight of my high school experience. That is what the most important part of my extracurricular activities were. Um, and when I started doing that, my parents sort of started seeing that I was actually pursuing something outside the classroom, that I wanted to do something special, or I wanted to do something that is not just traditionally academics. There was a lot of talk about why I went into humanities in the first place, because my grade 10 grades, there was that stereotype always that good students are supposed to go into science. If you're choosing humanities, you're not making the best choice for yourself, all of those things, which I don't agree with. But that is something that had happened. Um, so when I chose to go into humanities, and I continued going to model events and debates, and I continued to show my interest in them. They started seeing that I was actually serious about studying, and I was serious about my future and all of those things. I participated in a lot of conferences, sometimes to the annoyance of my teachers because I was never in class, which is not something I recommend, by the way. Just like do whatever feels right for you. But ultimately, I was doing it for my resume, and because I knew that foreign universities do look at those kind of things. My Maulian participation was something that I included in my scholarship applications, things like that. That is something that I still cite, like the positions I held in high school is something that I still cite when I'm like applying to things or positions. So that is something that I think all of you should do, is that make sure that you have something other than academics to fall back upon if you want to go abroad, especially. Um, it took me about a year to convince my family, as I previously said, just because there was that notion that you can't, how are you supposed to live alone, all of those things. They weren't coming from a bad place, but it was still something that I had to deal with. I dealt with it by showing them continuously that I was actually serious about it. And about a year later, when they actually started taking me seriously, I started applying, which was a process in itself. And I think applying was not even the hardest part, even though there were applications that I didn't really understand. It was just convincing everyone around me to let me go. Nobody in my family or my near friend circle or any of those things, like my parents didn't really know anyone, especially a girl who had gone abroad. I was 17 when I came here, so they didn't really know anyone who had done that. So just the newness, the 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 whole idea of me going abroad and living alone was just new to them. But when it came to applying, the things I did were mostly um, just making sure that I read through everything. When you try to go abroad, a lot of people will try to pitch counselors and external agencies to you. I don't think that's necessary. Like, you don't have to necessarily go with really expensive people who will guide you through the process. If you really look online and if you just sit down and try doing your research about going abroad, you can totally go through the process on your own. People pay lakhs of monies and just to get guidance counselors, external agencies, and I didn't do any of that. What I did was I just formed some connections, and those people really helped me mostly through moral events and debates. I befriended some people who were also planning on going abroad, and they were my main point of contact whenever I ran into trouble. And a lot of times, which is something, don't just do this in your academic life, but I suggest do it in every aspect of your life, is just to reach out and ask for help. When I did run into trouble about the whole applying process, I just used to call up those universities and ask them what I'm supposed to do. And that really did help me. The whole process, like I'm studying in Canada right now, so Canadian applications are not as difficult as some other countries. You just have to you maybe apply in September, October. If you're late, maybe November, December. But it is better to start applying as early. It's never too early to apply or just sit down and research about all of these things. um, when you do apply, applying itself costs a lot of money. Like, those applications aren't cheap, which is also something that was a huge point of discussion in my family, and which really affected my decision to come abroad, is finances, because studying abroad is not cheap in any way. But if you have really good grades, if you have extracurriculars, you can bag a scholarship, and always at least try. Don't have the regret of not trying if going abroad is something you want to do. Um, to apply, I had to stay up most nights just because of the time difference. Like, I woke up at 6:30 for this. But the time difference meant that I had to wake up, I had to stay up most nights, and then go to school in the morning, and then come back and do those academic homeworks, and just follow up with my extracurriculars. Um, so managing all of that with my academics sometimes meant that my academics did suffer. I remember doing really badly in my economics midterm in grade 12, which Dira ma'am she knows. I was scolded a lot for it. I did end up doing well in my boards though, but it was difficult to manage. But what really, I guess, kept me going, or how I learned to manage it all, is just focusing on what was important. Sometimes that would mean, like, if an application deadline was really close by, it would mean prioritizing that. But then if I had an exam coming up or I had a lot of homework piled up, it meant prioritizing my academics. So there's no question, there's no particular answer to what should I prioritize. That is, it's not a black and white question, it's very gray. You have to make sure to prioritize the things that are upcoming and or due. um, then after applying, I started getting into universities in around January, February. um, it happens way before your boards, but I don't think that is something that should affect your performance in boards. I think I let it affect my performance a little bit, even though I ended up doing really well. um, Applying itself was just such a huge deal. It took up so much of my time in preparation for boards that I wasn't able to maybe do as well as I thought I would do. I was pretty satisfied with it at the end of the day. Like, no one asks me what my grades are right now. Like, nobody will come up to me and say, how much did you get in grade 12? That is something that is important for your college admissions, though, and just for your future and just for your academic career. So make sure you do well in those exams. But at the same time, I did get it, like after I started getting into universities, things just started becoming very real for me, also for my family. I had been harping on about going abroad for a couple of years at that point, and then when I did start getting into universities, I just started to realize that this is something that might actually happen. Like, I would have to live without my parents, without any of those supports that I'm so used to in a foreign country, and do so many things on my own. Really little things like started freaking me out. Like, I didn't know how I was gonna manage my bank account or credit cards. Like, that's just one example. So tried to like sit down and learn everything that is about banking in one day, which is like not something you can do. But I realized how many life skills I didn't have. I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to like fix really small things. And all of those things are things you need to know if you want to come abroad and live alone. Um, when I came here eventually, because I came maybe in September. Yeah, I came in September of 2018. I didn't have all of those skills, but that is something that I learned along the way, which is, I think, one of the biggest um, benefits of living abroad, is that it teaches you to do things on your own, and just really forces you to be in a difficult position out of your comfort zone sometimes. When I talk to my friends from school, or when I talk to the people, they have this really rosy idea of what living abroad must be. You get to they think it's all enjoyment. You get to enjoy, go out and do things, but it's really not as rosy. Of course, there are some high points. Naturally, there are some high points, but what I see compared to my Indian counterparts, compared to my schoolmates who are now in Indian colleges, is that um, really you have to make sure, like, if you want to come abroad, you really have to make sure you have that sense of independence, because professors here push you way less. They will hand over the work to you, but most of the work will have to be done by you. It's not like school. It's not as simple as teachers coming in, giving you notes, like explaining things to you and just going away. Most of the work here, most of the legwork, you'll have to do it yourself, which can be a good thing for some people and which can be a bad thing for some people. So throughout the session, like when I speak more, you'll realize that this is a theme which comes up pretty often, is that when you make decisions like going abroad or what you should study, all of those things, truly only do things which you think you can do. Like, tailor make those decisions for yourself. Don't go abroad because your family friend went abroad, or because someone else you see is going abroad, or because it's the cool thing to do. Because I've seen a lot of people who come abroad for the wrong reasons and they just crash. um, it's not made for everyone. It gets tough to live without your family sometimes, but it is a really rewarding experience. So only do it if you think you have it in you to just, live alone and do all of those things alone. um, that is something that is the biggest maybe advice for anything. Like, what major you choose, what academic path you go on, what you do after college, in college. Don't look at other people, because what works for other people might not necessarily work for you. So after I came here, it was very different from what I thought it would be. It was better in a lot of ways. It was also worse in a lot of ways. I realized that people are genuinely really helpful. My experience up till now has been very positive. In Canada, the people I've met have been really helpful. If you reach out to your university counselors or professors or teaching assistants, they will try their best to help you out. I was actually at a different university in my first year. I was at York University. So when I went to York University, the environment was good. It was not bad, but I found it very unsuitable for what I wanted. I actually like studying. I like my subject, and I'm doing a specialist in political science. A specialist is basically something that exists only at the University of Toronto. It's a major, but more in depth. Um, so I'm specializing in political science, and I really like the subject I've chosen. And I found that the academics at York weren't necessarily the best. I didn't have as much coursework as I thought I would. So I transferred over to the University of Toronto, which is Canada's premier institution. And at University of Toronto, the work pressure is just way too much. Most of my days are spent just doing essays and all of those things. Which is also something that I found was different, is that there's a lot more pressure on you here because most of the work you have to do it yourself. This is all just based on what I hear from my friends. So if it's something like, if you think the reality is a little different, don't quote me on this. This is just some things I have found out from my friends who study in Indian colleges and universities, is that over here, learning is much more research based. I have a friend who is studying political science in India, in Kolkata, and her experience is very different from mine. Over there, from what I've been told, is professors will give you notes. We don't get notes here. We don't. Things are not dictated to us. The professors will come in. They will lecture you, but after lecture is done, that is, lecture is not where most of your learning happens. We have something known as tutorials, where we break into small little groups of 20, 25 people, because lectures here are like 500, 600. I've had a lecture which goes up to 1,000 people sitting in one room. So it's not possible for the professor to connect one-on-one with all of those students. So lecture is where we're told what the subject matter is, but we break out into little groups of 20, 25 people and have little sessions with like a teaching assistant who's like a PhD candidate or someone. And they lead the discussion, and that is where most of our learning happens. In that, discussion is important. You can't really get good grades or really succeed at your academics here if you don't want to learn. If you don't go to tutorial, if you don't go to lectures, nobody's going to penalize you. Nobody will even remember that you went or didn't go, but it'll just show up on your transcript. So when you come abroad, the responsibility truly falls on you itself. People either make it or don't make it based on whether or not they want to actually put in the work. If you just want to come abroad for the sake of coming abroad, you will find the academics not suited to you. As for extracurriculars, that is another thing that I noticed was different, because extracurriculars here have a lot, they're way more formal. Right now, I'm going to be moderating at NAMAN next year, which is U of T's college level, U of T's university level MUN. And the process for that was not simply as just going up to my friends and saying, I want to moderate this conference, let me do it, like the way it is in school or at colleges in India. It was way more formal than that. I had to send in my resume, I had to write, answer questions, I had to fill out a form. They liked my application. Then they called me in for an interview. I gave an interview, and then they got back to me a week later saying, okay, fine, you can moderate. It's way more merit based. Everything here is more merit based. Connections can get you far, yes, but if you don't have the merit, your connections won't really matter. So I think that is what being abroad has really taught me, is that to focus on my resume and just develop skills that I bring to the table in terms of my academic and professional life. But being abroad has really helped me in my personal life too. In more informal terms, it has taught me to do things which I thought I would never do. I just moved in to my room like a week back and setting up my whole room on my own, carrying really heavy things. I never thought I would just carry 20, 30 kgs worth of suitcases up 2, 3 flights of stairs. And yeah, friends are there to help you. That's definitely true. But then you need to do some of those things on your own too. Um, like looking at, like, I had to buy a fridge for myself. I have no idea what works for fridges, what doesn't work for fridges. Figuring out those silly little things on my own, managing my own bank account, that is not something that I knew how to do before I came over here. And living alone means that you have to do those things even if you don't like doing them. Getting rid of insects, I was really scared of insects before I came, but now if I see one, I have no one to run to and say, mama, take this out, or papa, like, get rid of it. You have to just do it on your own, like, do everything on your own. You have to make sure you eat healthy on your own. It's just that if you don't eat healthy, if you don't go to class, no one's going to say anything to you. Nobody is going to care really, but it's all on you. Like, you can make it a really good experience for yourself or you cannot. There are a lot of distractions abroad, definitely. That is something that I think all of you should know if you're planning on going abroad, is that those distractions are not something that you should let yourself be distracted with, if that makes sense. Because at the end of the day, those distractions will exist in any country, in any university. If you want to get distracted, you will find a way to get distracted. I'm only saying this because I get those questions often. Um, uh, you know, I don't know how to say this. If you live alone, you get a certain sense of independence, which is like a given, right? But you shouldn't misuse that independence or manipulate that independence to for things that are not okay to do. Again, if you do them, nobody's gonna say anything to you. People won't even find out. But at the end of the day, it'll be a bad experience for yourself. When you come abroad, inevitably your family will be spending a lot of money. Even if you're on a scholarship, just living costs are really high. And doing that to them is not a fair thing to do. And if you're truly coming abroad to learn and to know more things, you won't get distracted. When you come abroad, the courses that you have a lot of flexibility in them, which is one of the biggest things I really like. Even though my major is my specialist is political science, my major is book and media studies. I'm doing an astronomy course right now. You have to have breadth requirements in universities. So you have to take a few science courses. You have to take few social sciences. Social sciences courses, regardless of whatever your stream is, because they want to make sure that you graduate from the university with a proper all-round learning. So I'm doing an astronomy course now, which is not the kind of flexibility you necessarily get in all institutions in India. I could do a physics course right now and nobody would stop me. And even in the specialist or major that you choose, there's a lot of room for you to move around. In political science, they have hundreds of courses here at the university, and you can really tailor make your program for yourself. You choose your classes on your own. Someone who's interested in international relations goes for more courses on international relations. You're given like maybe 2 compulsory courses that you have to do in your 4 years here, but apart from that, there aren't really as many restrictions. So someone who's in political science in the same program as me, they could just have vastly different courses than me. I'm taking more international law, international relations, all of those courses, but they could just take courses on Canadian politics or Canadian federalism and things like that in their program, their courses. What they graduate with in 4 years could be very different from what I graduate with, even though we were in the same program. You also have a lot of room to move around in your majors and minors. There aren't really as many restrictions. I switched my major like 2 months ago. I was always doing political science, but I had a lot of classes left over, so I thought I might as well do another major. So I just added a major like 2 months ago. And they let you do that even though I'm done with half of my education. There's a lot of room to move around. And you get to choose your course loads based on what works for you. Five classes is what is recommended. You can go down to four, three, whatever you want, or you can go up to six. So really you get an experience which is like tailor made for yourself. But that is exactly what happens, that you have to make that experience for yourself. If I don't choose my classes according to my program, I'm the one who's going to crash and fail. That responsibility of what I need to choose, what I shouldn't go with, it all falls upon me, which inevitably makes me do more work. I have to research and see what courses could be beneficial for me in the future, things like that, which if I don't do, I'm the only one who suffers. So coming abroad makes you live your life independently. Of course, in the living situation where you're doing things on your own, but academically also you have to do a lot of things on your own, which could, as I said, either be a good thing or a bad thing for you. Um, about living here, I've been in university residence for this is my third year in university residence, and I love living in university. Living on campus is a great opportunity. You get to interact with so many of your peers, and they're truly a diverse bunch. That is something that you might not think of much when you come abroad, is that you get to really interact with a wide range of people. People from different countries, people from different ethnicities, religions. You get to know so much, which you learn a lot, not just from your academics, but just from living life. You have to so many things out on your own. When you need to go to places, you have to rely on Google Maps and just figure out the way yourself. There won't necessarily be anyone to guide you that this is exactly where you need to go. And those things can be pretty rewarding, if you really like doing things like that. I will just speak a little bit about why I chose to do poli-sci, and then you guys can ask me questions. Okay. Um, I chose to do political science again because I was really, I went to, our school had a inter-Amian conference when I was in grade 10. And when I went to that conference, I was really fascinated by the whole concept of it. I learned more in those 2 days than I ever thought I would in like just the span of 2 days. The conference was actually really good. I didn't win anything in it, but I really liked the idea of it. So I kept going to MEN conferences, and it was really bad in the beginning. I lost a lot of conferences. I just kept losing and losing until I started winning. And those first few losses were genuinely very disheartening, but I just liked the idea of countries interacting, being in that powerful position, giving speeches so much that I just kept going, not because I was hoping to win, but just because I really liked the experience. Even though I wasn't necessarily speaking myself, just hearing people around me was very fascinating to me. So I kept going to Morian conferences and I started winning. And I think when I went for my first couple of MEN conferences, I realized that this is probably what I want to do. Um, I want to make a career out of it. Then in grade 11 and 12, I opted for humanities because I wanted to do political science. Initially, I was going to go with science. I filled out my form and I wrote physics, chemistry, maths, all of those things. And at the very end moment, like I think the night before, I had a heart-to-heart with my mother and I just switched over to humanities because that's what I really wanted to do. I'm really glad I went with humanities. That is one of the best decisions I've made. And after that, it was I got Aisen ma'am as my political science teacher in 11 and 12, and she was a phenomenal teacher. She really helped me develop my interest in political science, and she really tolerated me sometimes when it came to moral events because I used to pester her a lot about it. But she really helped me, get into political science. So when it came to choosing my major in university, I had decided in 11 that this is what I'm going to do, like no questions asked about it. Then I came into university. I initially thought of maybe doing a double major in political science and international relations, and I realized it was way too similar to actually give me something. So now I'm specializing in political science and majoring in book and media studies, which is sort of a step in for journalism, but very different from traditional journalism. The book part of book and media studies is very important. I have courses on medieval manuscripts, how they're made, how they survive, and things like that. And it may sound really boring at first. It sounded boring to me too, but it's actually really interesting. It's just 4 months of me learning about medieval manuscripts. And that is also something that is really good about being abroad, is that you get such a diverse option of courses. I don't think universities in India would like give you the chance to just learn about medieval manuscripts for 4 months. Courses here are very in-depth. I could just take a course on Japanese politics, or I could take a course on really small issues. Like there's one course I'm taking is about Trump and the election. We have no syllabus. We just get together for 2 hours every week and we speak about what Donald Trump is doing in terms of the election. That is all our syllabus is. It's just 2 hours per week of discussing that, and then we get to write a paper at the end of the semester. So it's very it's not traditional. Learning abroad is not as traditional as you would think it is, and it really gives you an opportunity to do things you really want to do. I was very interested in Trump and the US presidential elections, and I never thought I would just have a course specifically on that, but I'm lucky that I do. So I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
My question is, every year thousands of students apply to study in universities all over the world. So apart from good grades, what else can we offer these universities to give our application forms an edge?
Are you asking what you can do to better your chances of getting in, or what the universities get out of admitting you?
Both the things. Like if my application form is good, what will give it an edge that they feel I have something unique to put on the table and they feel like taking me in?
That's a really good question. When it comes to what you can do to better your chances, I think I covered it a little bit before, is just making sure you have excellent extracurriculars. Not just because it's extracurriculars or because it's positions that you can put down. I was president of this club in high school. It's much more than that. If they see that you have something apart from academics, that also means that you have the ability to multitask. And that is something that is very important. If not in college, you will definitely need it when you go out and work. Having the ability to multitask is something you will have to develop anyway. And having extracurriculars as well as good academics means that you're able to manage maybe two. If you have more extracurriculars, 3, 4, 5 things at in one go. And more importantly, it's a good idea to have co-curriculars. There's a difference between extracurriculars and co-curriculars. Co-curriculars are related to your academic stream. So if you have co-curriculars, it really shows those universities that what you're trying to study is also something that you're trying to, like, those skills are something you're trying to develop in the real world. That when you come over there, you will have a more in-depth knowledge than, someone who's just doing academics. It's not very easy to get good grades, but it is a pretty simple process. You know exactly what you need to study. You study for it, give your exam, get good grades, and that's it. But when it comes to extracurriculars, you need to find opportunities. And that is also something that will take you a long way and show those universities that you're a good choice. It's because, opportunities for extracurriculars don't always just fall into your lap. Especially now, like with things like Internshala and like so many internship opportunities for you guys. If you try and look for opportunities, it will tell the university that when you come over here, you will also try to look for those very opportunities that you will be a good student. And also, it shows universities that you will try to do those extracurriculars here. So if you debate or model UN or do any of those things, or like you're good at sports, when you inevitably go to your abroad, to your foreign university, you will continue doing it, right? So I'm still model UNing in like university. So it was a good idea for the university to choose me if they want to like develop their model UN team or debate team or whatever it is. So extracurriculars is definitely something, and really work on your essays. When you apply, you should apply to scholarships. Even if you don't think you'll get it, you should always apply to scholarships. So really work on your essays and just keep revising it. You should like spend a little bit of time on more than writing it. You should spend more time on editing it. Writing the first draft should be an easy process. Just put whatever you want to, but keep on editing it. And then inevitably submitted. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you.
In what ways were studying abroad advantageous to you or to anyone who plans to go abroad?
Okay. I think a lot of that I did cover when I was speaking. It was advantages for me because it really helped my academic goals as well as my personal goals. I wanted to live abroad because I wanted to, be independent, learn how to do things on my own, which I didn't think I would be able to do in India. I pretty much have family in every major city of India. So I always thought I would always be sheltered in some ways. And regardless of how different cities in India are, the basics of it are pretty similar. But when you come here, every little thing is different. Of course, the language they speak is different, the currency is different. Even learning how to spend that money was a thing in itself, like learning how to budget your money. How much dollars should I spend for a bag of chips? I didn't know it before I came. Um, but those are things that you learn that goes a long way, even if you want to just study abroad and go back, or you want to stay here, whatever you want to do. It is really advantageous to learn how to live on your own and be independent, and you really get the freedom to pursue your own things. Like right now when I'm here, most of my days just spent on my laptop studying or doing something else which is related to my career, like applying to things, which isn't necessarily true in India. Like when I was there for 6 months before because of the pandemic. And there was obviously that thing like you had to study, I had to study at night because my class happened at night. But there are also a lot of other commitments. If you have the freedom and independence to like make your own schedule for the whole day, you will spend more time on pursuing your interests. And I think that's really beneficial. Anyone else?
Yeah, so what was the process of application for the colleges or the universities, and also for the exams like TOEFL, IELTS, and GRE? If you could brief us on the cutoff marks and the criteria for selection, and suggest a few reliable sources of coaching and study material for the application.
Okay, so obviously I only applied to Canada, so I will be able to best guide you on Canadian universities. For other countries who my friends have gone to, uh, you do need to either give IELTS, which is like done by the British Council, or any other like English language test. um in that sense, I didn't do any coaching or any of those things. IELTS is pretty easy. I studied for maybe like 2 hours before the day of the exam. It just tests your basic English skills. And I think honestly, I think our school girls are competent enough to like ace IELTS. It's not a big deal. But definitely if you feel like you should practice, there are lots of they actually give you practice tests and things when you apply for IELTS before the exam itself. So do that, go online. But I don't think any formal coaching is necessary. According to me, I don't think like I didn't need it. As for other exams, I didn't give like SATs or any of those exams because none of my universities needed it. That's something that you need if you want to go to American universities. But in terms of that as well, as I said before, I didn't really need any external counseling. Like I didn't need a person who was telling me this is your application, this is your deadline, you need to do it, because honestly all of that information is like very readily available online. So if you do your own research, I think that should be enough. And for coaching, if you want to give SATs or something, there is something that you really need to figure out for yourself, if whether you need it in the first place before spending that much money on something that might not be very beneficial for you.
I would like to ask a question. So, as students traveling to a foreign country and joining a new institutions, do you think there are some safety issues we should be concerned about? And if yes, how should we deal with them?
Okay, I'm always very hesitant in talking to anyone about safety here, just because I don't want to come across as biased or something. Um, this is based on my personal experience, because safety is something that is very different based on where you are, what you're doing, and things like that. And I haven't had any safety issues yet, thankfully. There's obviously an added concern because I was a girl. My family was very concerned about safety. That was the main point of contention between them and me. But I think it depends on where you go and what sort of university you're going to. Universities in Canada, at least, they really do try to make you feel safe, and you can always reach out to people and like just ask them what you need to do. One thing I will say though is that it doesn't mean that everything here is foolproof. People can have bad experiences, but you really need to make sure that you know how to navigate situations. Just doing simple things like making sure a door is locked, or making sure that you have your keys in hand. Those things really go a long way. But for me, I found that I had more safety concerns when I was back home, honestly. When I was just traveling in Kolkata on public transport and things like that, I found it way more, I felt apprehensive then. I don't necessarily feel that apprehensive here. Professors, students are very different here. I've never had a fellow student do or say something to me which I would categorize as inappropriate. Professors don't really care about who you are. They don't care. They don't necessarily care where you're from or whether you're a girl or a boy or what you look like. As long as you like pay attention in class, go to their office hours, like try to build a relationship with them, they will be more than happy to help you. So I think that's pretty much it. But when it comes to safety, of course, as I said before, it's a very personal, just because things can be different for different people.
So, what sort of challenges did you face when you first moved to Toronto? And if, as a student, do you think that they are very common challenges, like majority of the students face the same kind of challenges?
So one of the main challenges that I faced when I came to Toronto was exactly like something I touched upon before, is that I didn't really know how to do basic things. When you first come here, of course, you have to like figure out really basic things. You have to buy things because obviously you can't carry everything from India. Um, very basic things like pillows or just utensils, and I didn't know how much money to spend on it. When it comes to that being a common thing, I think yes, everyone when they come here will face that in some way, just because it's a new culture. But I don't think any of those issues are unsurmountable. Like you can always get past them. The more you like, as you get used to the culture, the things, the way things are done here, you will get used to things. Like here, whenever you greet someone here, you just go hi, how are you? And that everyone is very friendly here, and that's not something that I expected. But as I lived here, after a couple of weeks I realized that's how I'm supposed to greet people regardless of how they are, who they are. And I think another challenge I really faced was getting used to how independent I needed to be. I knew that when I went abroad, I would need to be independent, but I didn't think course selections, what courses I'm taking, what time I wake up. I was just unused to that whole thing because I always lived with my parents when I was in India. And they would like, obviously the way it happens is that your meals are made for you, you just eat whatever is made at home. But over here you control all of your meals, which is either a really bad thing or a really good thing, because you can just revert to just eating burgers and pizzas and all of those things at every meal. Nobody's going to stop you, but at the same time it's not good for your health. And I really needed to navigate how do I balance between having the opportunity to choose my own meals, whereas at the same time making sure that those meals are good for me, that I'm staying healthy. And that kind of independence was just thrust upon me in one go, and I didn't know how to deal with that. So I think that is something that would happen to anyone who came abroad the first time, but I don't think that is something that would be like a continuous thing. You will get used to it.
Writing essays are like a huge part of the college applications, and I have been following the Common App and reading personal essays for the applications.
I feel like they are based more on your personal experience than on the topic. It's more of things you've been through or some traumatic experience. And it's way different to what we usually write in India. The whole structure, the language, everything. So what are your tips for those essays to write for applications?
I think what you're doing is actually a really good thing, just like reading up on other people who've written it and things like that. I think something that really helped me was I knew a lot of terminology that was used in North America. Like very simple, like you don't say class 12 or class 11, like the way you say it in India. You say grade 10 or you say junior, senior, all of those things. I knew a lot of those terminologies because I had studied reading when I was in middle school. And a lot of those books were books that were set in North America. So inevitably, I knew a lot of those things, but you never know. Living here and writing an essay for universities in North America is obviously a different thing than just reading a few books. So what really helped me was to just search on things the way you're doing, like reading essays, reading things that other people had written. A lot of my friends, when we were applying together, they did have like counseling support. So when I read their essays, they would have like different words. Like none of them had like the word class written in it. And when I wrote my first few essays, I had the word class in it. And I just noticed that was something I noticed. So I just changed it to grade instead. And another thing that really helps is just asking people to review your essays. So find other friends or other people who are planning on going abroad, who are abroad. Just ask them to review your essay and like give you suggestions on what you want to write. And I don't think essays are supposed to be based on like quote unquote traumatic experiences or things like that. Like yes, they just need to show you universities some sort of personal development. You don't have to necessarily base it on a traumatic experience. But I think what really helps is generally being authentic and candid in your essays. If you write something which has been repeated again and again, universities will figure it out. If you try to make up a traumatic experience, chances are someone else will have done the same and it'll be the same as yours. Universities will figure it out. And you're right, it is very different from the way you write in India. Research papers that I write here need to have footnotes and like references for every single thing that I write, which is also something that happens in Indian colleges, but they are really, really strict over here. You submit your research papers, your essays to a site that checks it for plagiarism. If they find out you've plagiarized something, they count it as an academic offense. If you do 2 academic offenses, you have like serious consequences. So it is very, very different. And the terminology is something that you might have to deal with when you write essays. But then, as I said, when you come here and stay here for a few weeks or months, you'll just get into the flow of things. I hope that helps. Anyone else?
I had another question.
Yes, go ahead.
Also, I saw that the applications require some sort of social work. A lot of US applications require some kind of social work. So what exactly is that social work? For example, I have been working with this NGO and I've formed an animal welfare community. So would that be enough for the application?
Yes, I think when it comes to applications, of course, it matters what you do, but it also really matters how you present it, how you put it into your essays, how you connect to the whole thing. So if you're doing that, first of all, that is really commendable. Good job. But it really matters how you market it in a way. If you're doing that, try to like tell them why you're doing exactly what you're doing. Show them that you've actually contributed and that it's not something that you're doing just for the sake of putting it in your application, and try to like connect it to what you want to do in the future. So if something, I'm just going to try and connect it to like political science. You can really connect it to saying, I want to make the world a better place. That sounds really cliche, but off the top of my head, that is something that you can connect it to. Try connecting it to what you're planning on doing in the future, and try connecting it to other things that you're doing, other extracurriculars or co-curriculars that you're doing. Your social work shouldn't be something that is out of the blue that you're doing just for the sake of doing social work. It should really, that's why it's social work and not something else that they require. It's because they generally want to see how you're affecting the real world through your passions and interests. So it's important to make that connect if you really want it to be successful. And I do think that's enough if you market it in the correct way.
It's wonderful listening to you, Drishti. It was really wonderful. All at one go, so spontaneously you're speaking. So much to learn from you also. Very good, very good. It's
Thank you, ma'am.
feeling so proud of you. Okay. So yes, Shomodeepa, over to you for the vote of thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. It was a great pleasure having you here, Drishti, ma'am. This was such an engaging.
I'll just interrupt. Drishti is feeling very embarrassed if you call her ma'am, so you can affectionately, with a lot of love, call her Didi. No problem.
So it was a great pleasure having you here, Drishti Didi. This was such an engaging session. You were sharing your advice and guiding us through your experiences. It was really appreciable since many of us plan to study abroad, but we are quite skeptical about it, considering the expenses and about residing in a different country. So describing your ups and downs and clarifying our innumerable number of doubts with such patience and care really boosted our confidence and trust in the process. Lastly, I would like to thank our school and our principal, ma'am, for taking this initiative for the students. I would also like to thank the technical team for making such a lively and interactive session possible for all. And we thank you all for being with us this evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you
that's
for
it. Okay, that's it. Yes, Drishti, would you like to say something?
No, ma'am, I was just saying thank you for having me and thank you for giving me the opportunity to just interact with my schoolmates, to my juniors. I know a lot of them and I feel very affectionate towards them. And your questions were great. It just really shows your interest, and I'm glad you are interested in studying abroad. Thank you.
Yeah, and you can also always get back to her, isn't it? Drishti, for any kind of help, she can be an all-time SOS for you. Okay. They can always depend on, I think they can always depend on you. You've been so helpful, even for me. So much I have learned from you. Thank you so much, Drishti. Thank you for being here. And now go have a great day because it's morning. It's 6:30 now. It's around 7:30 for you. Have a great day. Okay, take care. Stay blessed. Okay, thank you, everybody. Then okay, then should we end the meeting here?